Hey, Trekkers! We're here tonight with another episode of Trek to Nite. This is episode 10 for us, where we're going to be looking at the episode 6, I think it is, of Strange New Worlds. So, hey, Jack, what time is it?
Oh, it's time for Trek to Nite.
Hit it. Oh, it didn't play. There we go. Live television. Hey, we had a little bumpy start to the inning, but let's bring in our good buddy, Leo Janicek. Leo, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Live long and prosper.
Live
And
long and
happy
prosper.
Captain Picard Day.
It is Captain. Is it Captain Picard?
It is Captain Picard Day. It is the 16th of June.
Wow.
So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, there it
it's
is.
still time to celebrate.
Happy Picard Day. Yes, as I said, boy, this is Jack Pitcher. Jack ended up. Well, we were going to have him on a third camera, but we figured just have him right on in here as a member of the bridge crew, and try that and see how that goes. So tonight we are looking at the Serene Squall, which when I watched it last night at 3:30 in the morning, a little bleary-eyed, little grumpy, perhaps, maybe. It was not my favorite episode, but reviewed it again today for notes, and it grew on me. I still have a couple of issues, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yes.
But I think, Leo, actually, you had something cool that you wanted to.
Yes, I'm just a little as we show off our hobby. I hope the camera will get this.
Oh yeah, there it is.
It's a little washed out. I'm sorry. I tried to make the light. Let me see if we can get it. There we go.
There we go. Good.
I'm in darkness, and it's better lit, sort of.
You're Leo Janicek into darkness.
Yes, exactly. This is although it is slightly phasing in and out of reality. This is
But
part
that's
of,
appropriate.
yes. This is part of the Geeky Tiki first run of Star Trek TOS Tiki mugs. This is Captain Kirk.
Right.
And while I do have the whole collection, I just brought out two to show. And this is Mr. Spock, who
Nice.
a little better.
Look at that. Look at that.
It is. I must confess, I've not drank out of these,
Right.
partially because I'm terrified of breaking them, and replacing them now would be a little more expensive than they were when I got them.
Right. What are they actually made of?
They are ceramic.
They are ceramic. Cool.
And they're made by, and I get no kickback from this at all. I have no skin in the game, but Geeky Tiki makes really beautiful geek themed tiki mugs.
Cool.
I have some Star Wars ones as well. I got at New York Comic Con last year. It was a Han Solo and carbonite, but it's very large, so it's kind of like a buddy drink. Like you could do a Scorpion Bowl, like that.
Yeah.
Something that
We have a history of that.
We have a history with the Scorpion Bowls.
Yeah.
But they also did a series for they have Marvel, they have DC, they did Next Gen, and TOS I think are a little harder to find these days. Not impossible.
Okay.
In fact, I bought, I think Kirk and Spock I got from Think Geek back when that was a site you could go to.
I love that. Yeah.
But let's mourn that another day. But I just wanted to share this with you.
Right.
They are enshrined in honor in my home.
Was there, if I'm remembering correctly, Leo, there was a a cool kind of geeky sci-fi toy store in New York City. Is that still there?
There are a number. There's a place called Toy Tokyo, which is on
That's
the
what I'm
location.
thinking of, right?
It is still there.
Mhm.
You can find a lot of those Japanese toys. They're Japanese. It's something that's come over from Japan. Is the blind box, where there's a series and it's like, it's all characters from a certain anime, or sometimes it's just corgis or desserts. Like these are toys that some of the toys I'm like animals. I'm like, kids love animals.
Right.
I loved animals as a kid. I still love animals as an adult, but maybe not with the same passion I did as a child.
Right.
But they'll be like, here's different kinds of cupcakes or sushi. And I'm like, I'm not sure who this is for, but apparently there is a market for it.
Do you have an insight into that, Jack?
What?
Well, the reason
An
I ask
insight
you
into
this,
kawaii?
no, yeah, right. The reason I ask is because one of the reasons Jack wanted to come on this show was because in watching Strange New Worlds, he said, hey, look, I love this show, but it speaks to me as a millennial, correct? Or at least
Yeah,
as
absolutely,
having a millennial perspective.
Yeah,
right?
no, I feel like I'm getting to watch like the original Gene Roddenberry show, but just transported into like 2022, which
Right.
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I was saying, perhaps maybe you might understand the whole kawaii thing a little better than I do because.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ask the awkward trans man about kawaii things. I mean, people like cute things, and it brings bits of serotonin and joy.
Yeah.
I never understood the surprise box myself.
Right.
Well,
and Jack and I have a sort of an unfortunate history with that because without taking up too much more time with these side stories, he has a cousin who was a little younger than him at the time, so would spend summers with us and really enjoyed a particular video game.
Okay.
Is now the time for the story?
Well, we'll only tell part of it.
Okay.
I'm just going to tell the blind box part of it. Okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Blind box.
Because we don't want to get anybody's panties in a bunch again. But at any rate, he came to stay with us and over the summer played nonstop. What is it? Something beach volleyball.
Yeah, I remember it was on the PS2.
What's that?
That was on the PS2, if I'm not
right.
Yes.
Dead or Alive beach volleyball.
Yes.
Dead or Alive beach volleyball, which was basically an excuse for.
It was a volleyball game. All right, and that's how we played it.
And it doesn't hurt that it was just a bunch of cute girls with tremendous breast dynamics designed into them by programmers.
Which we as children just understood that it was because it was Japanese. Right,
exactly. Yeah. So at any rate, he loved it, and he loved it so much. And we were over in a gaming store and flipping through a catalog, and there it was on the page. You could order a whole crate of the little PVC characters from the thing, but they were in blind boxes.
Yeah.
And he had specific ones that were his favorites.
Yeah.
And so we went for Christmas. We ordered it from Japan. It was a whole big deal. We actually opened them carefully.
Yes.
Figured out which ones had the characters he liked. They sealed them up so they didn't look open. It was a big process. And then presented them to him for Christmas, much to his mother's irate.
Yes. Chagrin, perhaps.
Chagrin, it's a good word.
Yes.
I believe the comment might have been, would you give a 10-year-old a copy of Cosmopolitan?
And I was like, I already read Cosmo.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure they value the average 10-year-old.
I'm so glad that the entirety of YouTube knows this now.
Yes, but you know what? Here's what they should know, and that is we love this young man, and he loved these characters, and I think somewhat innocently loved these characters, and we wanted to give him a present he would long remember.
There you go.
And that we did.
And we did, yes. Yeah. At any rate, shall we get on with the task at hand, now that we've wasted a tremendous amount of people's time, and talk about the Serene Squall. Now, Leo, I did some breakdown notes on this.
Yes.
And why don't I just start rattling them off, and then as we get in, we can we can knock it around. the show opens up with a very actually amusing bit with T'Pring, who says she's speaking with she did the
opening log, yeah,
the opening log, which was kind of cool. So we're doing this thing, keeping up with that. Every week a different character does the opening log, which is kind of neat because you get a perspective on all the different characters.
Yeah.
So she did it this week, and she's it cuts from that to her actually being on basically a Zoom call like this with Spock.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, to bring the story to our anecdote in, I mean, she essentially read Cosmo.
Basically.
Yeah.
And so she's been studying human sexuality in various works and novels that were created,
in the 20th century.
A lot of them in the 20th century, which makes me think of later in life. Is this why Spock knows about Jacqueline Suzanne and
possibly,
and the giants? As he
the
calls
giants.
them? Yeah.
Apparently, their work has endured.
Yeah.
And they had this very awkward Zoom call, and they're both drinking wine, which was kind of nice. Like, we'll have a glass of wine. Right. And she's like, I have been studying human sexuality to understand your human part of you better. And you think, what?
It's almost a spit take.
Yeah.
Almost a spit take. But he's like, maybe we should read these together, because she's like doing a very sort of almost scholarly dissertation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really is sort of a wonderful moment, and it's a good way to open the episode, because a lot of this episode, I wanted to make sure Jack had seen Spock Amok, because in some ways, to me, especially in the second viewing, I felt as though they're a little bit interconnected, because they both have a lot to do with the relationship between Spock and T'Pring. So then we cut to this counselor has come aboard the Enterprise with this side mission, or this plea that the Enterprise will help her go into this area outside of Federation space to try to rescue people that have been on these colony ships and have disappeared.
Right.
And according to her, it's because of space pirates.
Space pirates, yes. Well, as Pike calls it, this area of space is a bit of the wild, wild west.
Right.
There's the very fringes of Federation space.
Well, and that's a marvelous nod to Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Who, when he pitched the show originally, said, well, it's like Wagon Train to the Stars.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of neat. Now, I did wonder a little bit, would a Starfleet counselor have a Mike Tyson, tattoo on her
I think that is perhaps a glib overstatement of her face tattoo. She had this very stylish sort of like tentacle, it looked like, sort of around her eye. I thought it was quite attractive.
It is.
But
it was,
culturally,
it was a little white, let's put it a little pirate flag to me, but that's just me.
It's I didn't dislike it. I think it gave her very sort of she had this very, because she went on the silver jewelry. She has high cheekbones and the silver jewelry, and he's definitely cultivating a look.
And we also learned that did we learn right away that she's sort of stepped out of Starfleet counseling?
Yeah, she was a Starfleet counselor on Starbase 12.
Right.
But she gave it up to sort of champion the cause of these colonists on the fringes of the Federation.
Right.
There's very few people who are willing to help them. And we also discovered that Pike is referred to as the Boy Scout. Yeah. And he said, well, that's not true. And then number one says, well, actually, Chris, it's in your file. I think that does track, because he is somebody who is very willing to help. Like he does have that sort of Boy Scout kind of quality,
definitely. And then the last thing before we go to the opening, they end up getting to Federation space, where they start to search for these ships. And then we go to our opening credit sequence.
Yes.
We then come back from that, and they get a distress signal.
Yeah.
And so they realize, well, this could be them. So, and there's some debate about, because they are outside of Federation space.
Well, they're just at the edge of Federation space, and they were like, the whole thing was, what are we going to do? Because they were so far away from any sort of subspace relays, it would take 2 days to get a reply. Boy Scout was Pike's call sign when he was in the academy, says Craig Lubin. Thank you, Craig. I think that makes sense. Keith Jacobson says, it will take 2 days to get a message back to Starfleet. Remember that. I plan to circle back to that later. Keith runs a Star Trek game that Chris and I both play in.
Yes.
Tabletop RPG.
Right.
This, in case you were wondering, we are nerds. Anyway, if there was any doubt.
Astonishing.
So the idea is they're right at the edge, and Pike is like, I'm not going to wait 2 days to, if people are on the block, because it's pointed out by, I believe, La'an that these pirates, they're not, because the ships apparently don't have anything on them of any worth, but people are worth, because slavery is upsettingly common in outside of Federation space.
Right.
And he's like, well, I'm not going to wait for 2 days so people can be sold into slavery. We're going to go in. Spock's in a message. We're going to drop some buoys. Like, to hell with it, Yeah.
Well, and the nice thing about it is that it does harken back to TOS era technology, whereby they'd be out far and they'd send, Kirk would end up sending a message to Starfleet, but they wouldn't get it till the end, to get a response until the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was, here's the situation. We're going to go do this. We hope you are okay with that.
Yeah.
And then of course he does something spectacular and saves the day. And then they come back and say, oh yes, great job. Let's see, Craig Lubin. Well, let's see what else. Craig also says, somebody about to be the only ship in the quadrant, perhaps.
Yes. That is a real Star Trek trope, one I'm quite fond of, because it was like, well, there are 3 other ships in the quadrant, but so do you want to do it? I mean, that's not really interesting.
Right.
So they barrel forward.
Right.
Towards this.
Exactly. They barrel forward. One thing I noted in here, that the counselor seems to know a lot about Vulcans.
Yeah,
she seems to always be challenging Spock on his Vulcanness.
He's, they're debating. I mean, I feel like we're just dominating. Jack, please feel free to jump in.
You need to jump in. And I will say something. But what are your thoughts so far on that?
Okay. Well, the counselor needs to go home. That's what I think. First and foremost, she is really gross, and the entire time, like, Spock's like, talking with her, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be very high school right now.
Yeah.
But anyway, like, I felt uncomfortable for him. I'm like, no, like, stop being weird about him being Vulcan.
In what way did you feel uncomfortable for him?
Because he's constantly. I mean, the topic about him being half human, half Vulcan is always brought up.
Right.
And like, I don't know, if I were Spock, I'd be like, mind your own goddamn business.
Well, yeah, that's true. I can see that. I mean, and it is sort of a subject that he's grappling with enough on his own.
Yeah.
So,
although, I mean, I took it, like, it is interesting that I took it to be that she is trying to offer him some insight. Although she does say, she gets at certain points, she goes, boundaries. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, but and she does back. She does back off a couple of times, and with the idea of saying, "I just know a lot of Vulcans."
Yeah,
which is sort of like saying, "Well, I just know a lot of black people." So,
okay, fair enough. That's
fair enough.
I can't.
One in the Jack column.
There you go.
Yeah.
As an old white man, I feel like I can't counter that with anything.
No.
But
I like it.
But interesting that, like, I found her interesting. I'm not sure I liked her, but I found her interesting in the beginning.
Well, and as we get further into the story, my opinion of her changes. So
Yes.
yeah.
By the
So
way, this
anyway,
was the shortest cold open. One of the shortest cold opens we had. It was about 8 minutes. You know, because
how does it? Let's see. Craig says she was trying to get Spock to share his pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoilers.
Is that a glimpse into the end, perhaps?
Perhaps, yes.
Oh God, I hope no.
Anyway, so blah, 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 blah. Oh, they do find the colony ship with life signs on it, and they beam over.
We
but
also,
it's a trap.
yes.
Yeah.
And hardly a surprise.
They're popping up all over the Enterprise, and they're beaming on. And luckily,
actually, before that, we've jumped a bit.
Oh, did we?
Where Enterprise gets caught in a trap, which is
I forgot about the net.
Laser net, which is getting smaller. Very much looks very much like the Tholian web.
It does,
or at least reminiscent of it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to figure out how to get it. And they're like, everybody's pitching ideas. Spock says, listen, we can find the one with the highest energy output. If we hit that, it'll shut everything else down.
Right.
And he's scanning, and they're like, okay, well, fire phasers. And Lan's about to fire. He's like, well, no, wait, there's a second one.
Right.
And they're trying to, he's like, Pike is like, come on, Spock, tell me which one to do. It's impossible to guess. He's like, just give me your best hunch. And then he very panically picks one. They shoot it, and it works.
Right.
And it looks like he's about to have a stroke because
I felt for him in that moment.
Yeah.
That was
he describes hunches are disturbingly similar to guessing, which for a Vulcan is probably the height of panic attack. So they're like, all right, so they go through, and then they find the ship,
right?
The ship, and they're like, there are life forms. There's like 300, which is what it was on the colony ships. There's about 30 other people. They figure like, okay, they're going to sell them into slavery. Let's beam over. This is Lan, you're with me, and they go over. They beam over with a landing party, and boom, 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 it's a trap. Unsurprisingly.
But so right. So then people start popping up all over the Enterprise.
Oh yeah.
Beaming on board to take the ship, and luckily Una locks down the controls.
Yes.
Before the bridge gets attacked. There's a little firefight on the bridge.
Very cool, because apparently Lieutenant Ortegas keeps a phaser underneath her console. Not sure that's regulation, but it's good.
Eric Hutt says makes the crew look like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Way too gullible. So they're going to work for the Empire then.
Yeah. Well, I like the firefight. I also liked you see Spock do some very cool neck pinch. He neck pinches
lots of neck pinches.
Like 3 or 4 guys, and the final guy he fights, he just grabs him. He smashes him into a console. Like he's kind of like losing his shit a little.
Yeah. No, can I say fucking?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
No. Like when I saw that scene, I was like, "Fuck, Spock!" Like, my dude.
Yeah.
He also picks up the dude and throws him across the bridge, which we get to see some of that vaunted Vulcan strength, which, depending on what episode you're watching, is either twice as strong as a human or 3 times as strong. But he definitely like messes that guy up, and he escapes with Dr. Aspen. And she's been shot, although they're just using stun beams because he's like, well, they're probably trying to capture us.
Yeah, because they want to be able to sell them on the open market. Our good buddy Keith Jacobson says, and I went to post this because Keith usually is an enormous fan, but he says, I know it's a trope of Trek to periodically have the Enterprise captured, but this seemed a particularly lame. I'm
not sure it's lame. I like the idea, like, are they? I would say that they were duped, but I think it goes to the idea of the Federation. Ultimately, is not. They're not. This is not SEAL Team 6. Keith Jacobson also says, I think the crew could have put up a better defense. Well, they got caught with their britches down, as Admiral Kirk would later say. Right. But I think that the fact that my interpretation is that because the Federation is ultimately an optimistic organization,
right?
that they'd rather take a chance and save somebody than be too cautious and let people die. So that is my perhaps Pollyanna-ish interpretation of the situation. But
well, and in the meantime, we cut over to see Pike, who's been captured and basically meets Redbeard, the Orion pirate.
Yes, Remy is his name.
Yes.
Who's got this other alien, this weird green alien who's just like keeps punching Pike in the face.
Yeah.
And Pike is like, because he's like, well, we need the codes for your ship. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
And he throws some weird gruel on him. And he's like, is this what you eat? He said, oh, it's an Orion speciality.
Yeah.
Is everybody, the crew loves it. And then they cut to all these shots of the crew kind of like, very awkwardly.
Like the crew, no, I'm not really so sure the crew loves it.
He said, well, listen.
Just to round out this comment about it, they seem to capture Starfleet's flagship easily.
Yes.
From Craig Libben.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they essentially walked right into it.
I did. I do know that when I was watching it, when I was watching it last night, I was watching it with Gina, and it was, like I said, 3:30, almost 4 o'clock in the morning by this point. I was thinking to myself, thinking of never mind. I'm just going to give you the quote. You'll know what I mean. Yeah. There's over 400 guys on there. Yeah. And there are a lot. There should be a crew of 400 and something on that ship.
Yeah.
Right? A piece of the action. There we go.
Piece of the action.
And so it did seem like there weren't very many people there. Like how many, if you're going to capture a starship with a crew of 400, don't you need at least 400 people to do that?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think it's a bit better. Like if you,
I kind of felt, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I kind of felt like this episode, we got to sort of see all of the shit show that would be going back on the Enterprise when Captain Kirk and his crew is away, trying to get themselves out of a situation. Like, we got to see, like, we see snippets of it, and you see Captain Pike, like, oh, well, we're just going to whip up a meal, and like turn, do a mutiny. And like, they're having like a damn great time of it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise, it's like, there's poor Nurse Chapel. Like,
well, here we go. Yeah. Eric Hutz, Eric Hutz.
Of course.
Eric Hutz says Nurse Chapel put up the strongest defense.
Yeah.
And she did. The thing I love about Chapel, because, she says, I'm a nurse. I'm not armed. Yeah. Well, she is armed because she knows damn well how to use a hypo spray.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that is the way she will put up a defense. She knows a medical way of being able to do it without running around with a phaser, and probably in many ways, maybe a healthier way to, depending on what she's using, to do somebody. So that was kind of cool.
I like it. I'm very much crushing on this version of Nurse Chapel. No offense to Nigel Barrett Roddenberry, but she's got so much. She's so sassy and smart and confident and, charming. And, even when she's talking with Spock before, who confides in her about his problems about T'Pring, and, he's very distracted and he's not really listening to her. He says, why should you listen to me? He says, because you are being very charming and I am missing it. She's like, see, you're learning.
Yeah.
Right.
And Keith says, I think they could have captured key areas, but subdued the entire crew except the nurse. That's strange credulity for me. Listen, it moved along, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Now, he does.
Yeah.
Love the new Nurse Chapel, so we won't pass that by. But yeah, anyway, we're getting bogged down in this, which I think we all generally agree. It's a little wiggly. But
just because we don't see, they may have like locked people up, they rounded them up, and also because most people don't walk around armed on the Enterprise, with the exception of like security personnel. Right. And we don't know how many pirates beamed over. It looked like they were, they may be rounding people up and then beaming them back over to the other ship, throwing them in a cage.
Well, and it does make me think of which Star Trek. It's which Star Trek film had Christopher Lloyd as the big
No, Star
bad?
Trek 3, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So in that film, there's only a few of them on this
Yeah.
bird of prey, and the guy's like, well, we're outnumbered, and he says, "We are Klingons."
Yeah.
Of course, they don't end up
It doesn't end well for them for the most part.
Yeah, it doesn't end well for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
John Larroquette the Klingon.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's see. So Pike now is starting this. He's got the seeds of this plan in his mind. Obviously, apparently, as we'll hear later on, he's done this before.
Oh yeah.
So he has some experience with how to deal with this kind of thing. So he starts working this angle with the food.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, how about we do this? How about I cook for you and your crew, and then we'll see, how things. So basically, he's trying to win over win them over with food.
And he does, because he makes it. And Remy is like, it's no better than mine.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm like, well, he looks around and everybody's like, really. And in fact, when he's serving the guy who was punching him in the face,
Corn, please.
he gives him more, and he's like a little more, made some stew of some kind.
Right.
Yeah.
And and he knows what he's doing, because he's just sowing dissent, because this is a crew that's run by fear and so on, and greed. So it's not difficult to undermine it. And he's even talking to Remy. He's like, well, he's like, but we're going to sell you the Klingons. He'd be like, the reason why guys like you don't usually do deals with Klingons is because you usually don't end up alive at the end of it. And the guy's like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And everybody else is the Klingons. Like this woman who is sort of like, I guess, like his number one, or who was sort of looking when he's talking about the Klingons. She's looking at him like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
And
right.
They're doing this great little. He's just being his charming self and undermining all the stuff that's going on, because he can see like these guys are eating terrible food, and there's no.
There we go. John Weber says, "Good food equals hearts and minds."
It does.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hello, John. Yes.
Our longtime buddy, who basically is the reason this show exists, because we started doing his show. We thought, it's a cool idea. We should do one.
Spock and Dr. Aspen are in sickbay, where he gives him a hypo spray. He's like, "You're lucky. It was just a stun beam." And she's like, "Listen, we should just abandon ship." And he's like, "This is too valuable a ship to leave in the hands of criminals."
Yeah, she starts playing that song a little bit. Now she keeps slipping it in. I mean, she says, "Well, everything seems to be about let's get out of here.
Yeah,
let them have the ship." And Spock is not about ready to let them have the flagship of the Federation. So at any rate, let's go down and let's get to engineering, because I think I can, do the code.
She also tells the story about how her husband, who was a Vulcan, was fighting, like his ship was attacked by it's the title of the episode, which something Squall.
Serene Squall.
Yeah.
Yes.
The Serene Squall.
The Serene Squall.
Yes.
And I wish that he'd been afraid. Like if he wasn't logical, he might have survived.
Right.
And she's like, "Listen," and he takes out like a case with a couple of phasers, a couple of communicators, and he offers her one. She's like, "I'm not a fighter, Mr. Spock." She's like, "Everything you've told me up till now is in direct opposition."
Says otherwise. Yeah.
Says otherwise. So they hustle down to engineering, because he says, I can transfer control from the bridge to engineering, and then we could, start beaming people back and so on. So they head down there, and we find we find Nurse Chapel, who is trying to send out a signal, and also a bunch of other pirates who've been hypo sprayed into submission, lying about the engineering movement. They're like, Spock is like, all right.
I do love that line she has where she's talking to herself and she's frustrated, and she says, "Why do they make it so hard just to send a simple SOS?"
Yeah.
It's how I feel anytime I'm on the phone with with my cable company.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, or doing anything basically. You can't talk to anybody anymore. All right.
No, you can't. It's all automated systems.
So Spock transfers control from the bridge to engineering. He's unlocking communications, transporters, lockdown engineering, and then he's like, "Oh, Dr. Aspen, can you try to reestablish transporters?" And they're like, so what? Nurse Chapel's like, "Hey, we're locked out." He said, "I'm locked out too." And then she's got 2 phases on them. Heel turn, the big heel turn that we've all sort of been expecting. That she is not, in fact, Dr. Aspen. She is Captain Angel, space pirate.
Yeah, so great. So so probably around 4:10 maybe at this point, or 4:15.
Okay.
That's when Gina says to me, like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. I mean,
I was suspicious of her, but I'm not sure it's from her performance. I think it's more from having watched countless hours of TV.
Right.
But now she's like a space pirate, and she is. I mean, I was engrossed out the way Jack was about Dr. Aspen. Fair enough. I mean, I understand why you.
Yeah. No. I might also be a little biased because Spock is my husband. So.
Right.
There is that.
Yeah, you have a thing for Spock.
Absolutely.
And who doesn't, apparently?
I have a very dear female friend who has quite a crush on Spock, as I think a lot of fans do.
Now, there's.
It's also deeply confusing because you would never think of Spock as being a heartthrob, but like.
Well, that was a confusion in the original series for the producers of the show.
Well, because they, Shatner was the leading man. He's a handsome dude,
Right.
Yeah.
But there was something about Spock that resonated with a lot of the female fans, and I'm sure some of the male fans as well. So I'm not, to be completely above board about that.
Now, there are a lot of people who will say that this particular performance of Spock next to Nimoy's is one of the best we've had.
It is interestingly more, I don't want to say more nuanced, but because he's not the Spock we know, he's a Spock who's sort of struggling with his emotions. Nurse Chapel is already Spock's work wife. Well, you're not wrong about that, Craig Lubin. You're not wrong. Very insightful comment from the show, Craig Lubin.
Yeah.
I need a moment of silence after that, all right? I'm sorry.
Nurse Chapel, I will have to work that out. Anyway, so now Captain Angel is a wonderful, let's say antagonist. She is a villain, but not in like the mustache twirling way. Suddenly now, like weirdly flirty.
No, she's like a fun pirate.
She's a fun pirate. It's just very,
fun pirate.
She is fun for somebody who,
not the pirates that board luxury yachts in the Caribbean and slit everybody's throats when they're on vacation. Not that kind of pirate.
Right.
Yes.
The fun.
And we also find out that that the whole point of this was Spock, and we're like, well, okay, what is that about?
Right.
Apparently, there is a Vulcan in this. It's not really a prison, which is later pointed out by T'Pring. It is this rehabilitation center.
Rehab center.
They're doing
Betty Ford clinic of.
Yeah, but they're doing painting. They're like Zen gardening. They're doing Tai Chi, and I'm like, I would go there. That's like a place you could just like if you just want to be like, I'm just going to decompress and I'm going to relax. Do we have to quote John Weber, she's a villain in a WB TV show way.
I was gonna say, she kind of really is.
Oh, I give up.
She is a little bit. There's a bit of that sort of sassy WB flavor to her, but
see, I like
because I feel like it.
Just to say, so Craig, because he's a friend of the program,
yeah,
and he watches both our show, as well as Flobo Boyce's show, which is where John Weber is a co-host of that show. And they are on the hour before we are on another network. I wanted to say that since I was like 12.
Yes.
At any rate, but so Craig gets to hear all these things that John and Flobo, great comments and thoughts, I'm sure, say. But I don't want to watch it before we do ours because
no, I don't either. I mean, I
watch him after because I want to. Oh yeah, he was right about that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to influence what we're talking about. So, yeah, but Craig sees them both, so Craig always knows what John's got to say.
So gets a call from Angel saying like, "Hey, I've got your boyfriend here. Bring me Zavarius."
Ooh, and you missed a little gem.
Oh yes.
Who do we get to see? Who tells T'Pring that she's getting
Stan, the first apprentice of Stan, who is the Vulcan equivalent of a mayonnaise sandwich.
But you know what? I think they did a great job casting the actor because does he not look like Stan?
He does look like Stan. He does.
They did a great job casting.
Stan was always like, he's like not that much of a, Stan is not. Stan was always like, Stan was there.
Yeah.
Reasonably good looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was that, Jack? I'm sorry.
I was just saying Stan is safe.
Yeah.
He is. Keith Jacobin says, 2 days to get a message to Starflight. Yes, they're close enough to Vulcan to have real-time conversations with T'Pring. I don't mind being flexible with canon, but I would appreciate if the episodes at least internally consistent. What they did drop communication buoys, subspace buoys on the way, and she also brought them to the edge of Federation space. And presumably they're closer to Vulcan than they are to Starfleet Command.
I mean, that's what I
sort of let that slide. Yeah. But it is funny because we all have a private chat that we do on the Facebook Messenger because a lot of us are friends, and Keith is one of those people. And I got up this morning just all full of piss and Romulan ale, about this episode, which I scaled back after the second viewing of it I did today. But Keith was the one who was like, oh, well, it had some flaws and, but, generally I enjoyed it. So, but Keith's been the most negative person on the show tonight.
He's had,
which I love. I love you, Keith.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And Boo.
Stan Boo.
Stan Boo. Yeah. He's the guy who whisks our T'Pring away.
Yes.
But the way they're telling the story now, I've got to say, I have a feeling Spock had a tad to do with it.
Yes.
But we won't spoil that.
Right.
But
also back on the ship, Pike is sowing the seeds of dissent.
Right.
With the crew.
Yeah, because they all end up back in the jail cell.
The jail cell.
And the guys are but a lot of the pirates are mingling around, and I think it's because, quite frankly, they might think the crew of the Enterprise is kind of cool or something. I don't know.
They're a little fed up with the way Remy is running things, and he's talking.
That brings me to a point that I've been holding on to that I wanted to ask: is Remy really the captain, or is Captain Angel the captain, and he's just playing the captain?
I think he's just playing the captain.
I thought he was just playing the captain
because it leads into the fact that Pike never really buys him as a captain from the get-go.
No.
He just doesn't think he's smart enough to be a captain.
And he also is talking to the one, the female pirate who seemed to be under Remy or so, there's no real clear hierarchy in this pirate crew. But he's like, well, you seem to be interested, you're concerned about the rest of your crew. That sounds like captain material to me.
Like,
right. And like, it's just all that stuff that starts you like, God damn it, he's right.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Fucking Orion.
Howard Johnson was right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile,
sit back, just like, yep.
Yeah.
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 So meanwhile,
Howard Johnson is right that Philip Johnson's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Enterprise is now at the edge of Federation space, and T'Pring is showing up, and Captain Angel's like, "Hey, let's warm up the transporter room and switch our levers." Which I was like, well,
that was the cringiest line,
right?
In the whole, I actually have a note on that one. Where I actually wrote it down literally. Where is it? Let's get these transporters hot and trade levers.
Yeah, that's
After that, I just have ew.
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Unless you're European, it's very tough to drop lovers into a conversation and not sound like a creep. Craig Goodwin says he reminded me of Taserface from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I won't lie, in that moment, I was kind of all about her being gross. Like I was like, yeah. All right.
It tracks.
Now it's like,
well, see, now it's like over the top piratey gross.
Right,
yeah, I mean, it was,
Before, I was like,
I mean, my feeling about Captain Angel is the minute she became Captain Angel, that's when I liked her.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because even though she is kind of cartoon pirate,
she's very campy.
Very campy, very 66 Batman campy.
Yeah.
But I liked her, you know. You got a fan there, Craig, with your Taserface. But yeah, no, that's when I started to like her character. And where, as we get towards the very end of the episode, I started to think, you know, maybe I'd want to see her again.
Yeah, I would like to. I'm going to put it out right there. I hope we see Captain Angel again. There's only 3 more episodes, where this is actually episode 7, which is cool because
I know I said 6 and it's 7. I realized
that. I'm like, that means we only have 3.
With such confidence, I agree.
I do.
Yeah.
There you go. That's part of being.
I said that with Buzz Aldrin confidence.
There you go. But I'm hoping she comes back next season. I think Captain Angel is a terrific antagonist for the crew. So we're I'm just looking, we're we got about 15 minutes till the end of the hour, but so we're not doing bad, guys. We're doing pretty good tonight. But we are at the point where T'Pring shows up, right? Yeah.
And so Captain Angel thinks she's got this in the bag because T'Pring wasn't going to come.
Yeah.
Now she's here. And she's and so they start talking about all this, and then Spock gets shot.
Yeah, because he's like, "Don't do this." Like he's basically going, and she gets stunned. He gets stunned for his trouble.
Right.
And the Nurse Chapel brings him around.
Right.
And he gets up. She's like, "Don't watch yourself." He gets up. He says, "Please follow my lead, and I apologize for whatever is going to happen." And he announces that she was right about T'Pring was right about him exploring his humanity, his human half, because he's been having an affair with Nurse Chapel. And Captain Angel's like, "Yeah, no, I don't believe that at all."
Right.
And T'Pring, but then Spock plants a super passionate kiss, which she leans into. They're both like, you're like, damn, that is
yeah, and this I think we could probably debate for quite some time, because when you look at now, one could say it was a performance to be convincing.
Yes.
But when you look at the physical contact, we've seen a lot with T'Pring at moments of Vulcan, significant, emotional whatever. None of them really had the passion of this kiss that he plants on Nurse Chapel. So it was interesting to me.
And then they do a Vulcan breakup, steamy, says Keith.
Right.
It was.
Keith also did say that he loves Captain April's scenery chewing.
Hearing that set
for days. So they do the Vulcan breakup, and I love the the little head gestures, and then it's the
this very ritualized breakup, very amicable.
Yeah,
because she's like, with this new information, I believe we should end our betrothal, and he's like, agreed. And they say a bunch of ritual stuff, and Captain Angel's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah,
that kiss was more than a peck. That was an even peck.
Yeah, that was well said, John Weber.
Yeah.
So then she's like, all right, destroy that ship. She's just like, she's fed up. And they are like, wait, we we've been locked out of weapons and shields are dropping. What's good? We would like, and then the Serene Squall sails in and is firing upon them, and they hail it, and it is Captain Pike.
And I love it. Not only is it Captain Pike, not only is he on the bridge of that ship, but he's at a ship's wheel.
I love that. That was great.
Like, I mean, Jack and I watched this thing in my second viewing. We just lost it. You know, they're on the ship. I mean, I loved it.
I loved it.
Pretty as all hell.
And he's like, "Well, fire at the impulse engines, you know, gently." And Ortega's does. By the way, Pike and Ortega's have great, like, back and forth banter. I love their, you know, because we got to see. We like.
And this episode was no exception to that.
No, no. It was terrific.
Whatever flaws this episode may have had, the stuff with Ortega and him was all spot on, like it always is.
And she fires, and of course, it's like he's like, I said gently. She's like, "What does firing gently even mean?"
Yeah.
I think that's a fair.
It's a fair question. It is.
I'm also married to Ortega as well.
Yeah.
Oh, I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ortega is fast becoming one of my favorite.
She's a delight. She's funny.
She's awesome. She's awesome. She's funny, and yet there's something about her that just says military. Like, I know people who've been, you know, I've known officers and I've also known enlisted men and women, and she just reeks that somehow. I don't know what it is about her, but it's the humor and the personality that you see often with people in the military, and I think that she's great. So, and I love again, because we also watched Spock Amok, because I wanted Jack to see that some of the lead up stuff.
Yes.
And before we also talked about tonight's episode, and all those relationships that got developed in that episode were fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
So, but we talked about that.
And then, like, get yourself out of my chair,
right?
Which was great. And then everybody's, what do we do? And Angel has a last thing for Spock. She's like, "Listen, you know, I'm, you know, what does she say? It says
the last bit of
two things. She says, "It's not what you are, it's who you are." Yeah. You know, the idea of being, you know, the Vulcan human stuff, which is actually not a terrible.
No, actually, and we were talking about this too. That she's not 100% a big bad, because she's not great. Some of someone else in her.
Yeah.
Right.
But she's got some of the philosophy of someone else, as we will get the reveal at the end of the show. And I think that that's part of what we're seeing.
Yes.
You know, she wants, because of her contact with a particular Vulcan, she wants to be able to impart some of that proselytizing onto Spock at an early formative age.
She also says, Zaveri's always talked about you, and Spock is like, like there's a bit of a like, oh.
Now, Craig Lubin mentions they did that. They used the prefix code stuff from Star Trek 2 to disable the Enterprise systems. They really need to update that goddamn system firewall.
Well, it's a good thing they didn't.
Yeah. Well, and then there's a little bit of humor, because, you know, Spock says, "Well, Captain, we'll start beaming, you know, the crew back onto the ship," and things are kind of getting out of hand.
Yeah,
behind Pike. The mutiny is just getting very yo ho ho back there, and he's like, "Maybe you should beam us off first, and then get everybody."
Because it was just like, it's just a curtain behind them. Like, you just see all these shadows of.
It made me think very much of the set stylings of the 60s.
Yeah,
because there really is, like, there's just like this large ladder or rope.
Yeah.
Some guy climbing on it, like in silhouette in the background. You know,
very low budget.
There was not a lot of money spent on that bridge set for the pirate ship.
But they also, Angel beams out. She has this special necklace that we saw earlier. She taps it and she beams out onto a little ship that we saw earlier. We did not mention it on the show, but you see it when the Enterprise is going to the asteroid field, and it's like a thing that can grab onto asteroids, and then it just warps off, into parts unknown.
Right.
So now everybody's back, and then you see Pike sitting in the center chair, and he goes, "Army mateys, if we should ever catch those pirates again, we ought to make them walk the plank."
Yeah.
And number one is just, please don't stop. Just stop.
Yeah. And the reason that I love that moment so much was I worked for a man named Pete. And he was my boss, and we were on a business trip. We're coming back from a meeting off site, and we're driving around in the car. And for some reason, I don't know what our conversation was, but I started to talk like a pirate. And I said two big piratey arg, 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 arg kind of things. And Pete literally said the same thing to me. Please stop. And that was that.
Well, I believe Ortega seemed amused by it because they pan over to her, and
and quite frankly, I think, but what was marvelous about it is Pike doesn't just stop; he goes home.
Yeah.
He's sort of and then he folds the leg up in the captain's pose. It was sort of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was a very dad moment.
Yeah.
It was.
I guess I can't hang.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
I've been there, like
John Weber says, "Space Dad making Space Dad jokes."
Pretty much.
Can't argue with that. So now Spring, have a sort of a makeup, and she's like, it says, I'm seeing the value of your human side. Otherwise, you could not have convinced everybody that you had genuine passion for Nurse Chapel, which I know you do not have.
Right.
And
yeah,
like, yes, of course.
Yeah. So here's a marvelous. What?
Well, I was gonna say was that I think that it originally was supposed to be a ploy from Spock's point of view. It was supposed to be an act. However, I think perhaps Nurse Chapel did a little bit more for Spock than what he might have
he anticipated.
Yes, I don't think it was supposed to be like, oh, I'm just what's her name?
Who?
His fiance.
T'Pring.
Yeah. It's not like screw you, T'Pring.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he genuinely loves T'Pring.
Yeah.
That's just what I'm trying to get at.
Right, but perhaps maybe something sparked there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I especially for how T'Pring was like, oh well, now I've been researching this stuff, and made him wildly uncomfortable. I don't know.
I also think that this is the first time, in my opinion, that you see T'Pring and a little of that. What's the word I want? Self-confidence has fallen off a little bit, because I feel like that veneer that she puts up, and she puts up a great veneer. Yeah. She always seems to be very much in control in a lot of situations, and that felt like it faltered a little bit in a very real way.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cool moment dramatically, but she's saying what she usually says, but there was a subtext there that I think she was afraid. And I had it in my notes. Is she afraid she's going to lose Spock?
I think they're both like and then there's we should have perhaps a rebonding ritual, which is a little trip to Ponfarville. Do we have a comment?
Yeah.
Question: is Ortega's phaser strapped to the underside of her console a new thing? I've never seen that in a show before.
Right.
So maybe not for her, but maybe for the show. Yes.
I just assumed that was just like an Ortega character thing.
Could be.
Yeah. It could be. I'm not sure. But
of course you'd have a phaser strapped under like her console.
Number one also had a phaser, so it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right.
They may have them on
there are a lot of weapons that all of a sudden show up at a very, very quickly on that bridge. And to be honest with you, I don't have a problem with that. I think it makes some sense.
Yeah. It's just that they're not completely unprepared. So now
Craig.
Well, come on. What I bet
she also has one strapped to her bed.
When you're visiting, yes. Sorry. Too easy. right. My oldest, dearest friends, Craig Lubin. Anyway,
Yes.
Spock has a scene with Chapel. Captain Mike Jennings would be proud. He would. That is for me and Chris and maybe one other person.
Yeah.
So Spock thanks Chapel for basically going along with the whole thing, and he apologizes if he made her uncomfortable. And like, no. And they're sort of establishing, like, yes, no, we're just friends, right? And he's like, yes. And neither one of them seems entirely convinced by that.
No.
Or convincing.
Right. Or convincing. Yes.
Yeah. So, and the big reveal. And Chris, I know you have a video, I believe.
I do have a video of the big reveal as to who this mysterious
Vulcan's very.
The name's Spacko, reporting for duty over here. I was in the wrong hallway. I opened the door and I almost got sucked out into space. Now that's a Star Trek.
Yes. Well, that's not what happened. Although I think some people would have preferred that. Although
perhaps. Yeah, when they said the name Cybok, I really went, no.
Now,
for me personally, it's a little bit like, oh man, they're doing Obi-Wan Kenobi. They're gonna do this great new series, and who do we want to bring back? Jar Jar. Let's bring Jar Jar back.
But what's
we might be arguing who is more hated, Cybok or Jar Jar. Cybok, for fans who are not in the know, and I can't imagine if you're watching the show, you would not be
right. Yeah, I don't know what you're doing
here. Star Trek 5, most hated character in all Cybok or Neelix now fight. I think was it the Neelix Tuvok? I think
Tuvix would be the most. I see your Neelix and I trump you with Tuvix.
Yes. Anyway, although Neelix is pretty terrible. No offense to the actor, who I'm sure is a lovely.
I'll explain that to you later.
Anyway, so Cybok is Spock's brother, who is called the Laughing Vulcan, and he's rejected all logic. Played by Lawrence Luckinbill in the original movie.
Right.
We see a silhouette of sort of a long-haired Vulcan with what looks like a beard. We don't get to see the full face, sort of like a partial profile. And he said, this is somebody I was told to stay away with. It's his half-brother, Cybok, who apparently Sarek had out of wedlock. He is a bastard. I'm not sure if the Vulcans have the same, stigma to that.
That must not be an issue because he keeps having more kids with every show.
Well, yeah, you've got Spock. This is a question. Is Cybok older? Is Cybok older than Spock?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So this was before
Amanda.
He's hired Cybok before he marries
Amanda. Yes.
I
believe that is correct.
There. Now, John is not as unhappy as we are. Cybok is ripe for a relaunch, so he's happy.
I mean, they're trying to bring back the Gorn and make them scary.
Right.
Yeah. I would say Cybok, I mean, Star Trek 5 has a lot of problems. A lot of it was due to budgetary cuts and problems they were having like behind the scenes. Craig Lubin says, just wait, Stan is going to be another secret kid of Sarek. That would be really stupid. But anyway.
But not as stupid as our dear friend Spacko, who is the son of a waitress from Queens.
Yes. Well, he's a different kind of Vulcan. Anyway. All right. So, but I'm hoping this is a chance to take something that is generally disliked by most fans. I'm not a huge fan of the fifth film. There are elements in it that are sort of interesting. There are other stuff I'm like, what is going on? Maybe take another pass at the script. Anyway, but hopefully they can take him and make him an interesting character. I'm not sure if he's going to be a villain, although he certainly has ties to, an adversarial relationship with Captain Angel and so on. So I'm curious to see what happens.
Look, I may eat my words. I may come back and as John says, they may reboot him in such a way that he becomes a really cool, character, that we see either in, another episode by itself or someone that reoccurs periodically. We know where he ends up.
Yeah.
So, we know he can't hang around a lot because he's supposed to be a surprise in Star Trek V. Kirk doesn't know about him.
No. Kirk
so if we're going to see a young Kirk in next season, that would be hard to explain.
Well, it depends if Kirk is serving on the ship or if he just appears in an episode.
Well, and I think this is where I'm beginning to glean, and that is that the young Kirk is in an episode because he's on another ship.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe he was on the Farragut.
That's what I think. Yeah.
It's interesting. I have to say, and I've felt this way also since Spock Amok, is while I am, and also even from the pilot from Strange New Worlds, is like while we know where Spock and T'Pring end up,
right?
I still kind of feel like, at least especially initially, it feels like they feel like they're a good couple. Like you don't look at them and think like, oh, I can see how it's going to go bad. They both seem to care for each other, and they're both wrestling with things that we all wrestle with in relationships.
Although every time Spock and T'Pring are in an episode and Jack's mom, Carol, happens to be in the room, she goes, "Have they broken up yet?"
It's not Real Housewives of Vulcan. Anyway,
I don't know why, but she's just waiting for that to happen. She's just.
But I also can see Spock in this chapel as a couple as well.
Right.
And I'm a little torn as to, because it feels like Spock never ended up with anybody, at least in terms of none of them really did. They all seem to be married to the job. Because I guess it's hard to have like a family and be gallivanting about the galaxy.
Well, and I think, and it's something that Kirk talks about.
Yeah.
TOS, that he never, he's married to the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one relationship that was somewhat stable, where he ended up having a son, was
Carol Marcus. Yeah.
Carol Marcus, right? Where that didn't end up being a
they wanted different things. Yeah.
He didn't even know he had the son. So.
Yeah. So it's a little sad, but I do I'm kind of shipping Chapel and Spock right now because they feel like they're like a very, very cool couple.
Very cool couple. Well, and I'm just a big fan. So,
I
to be ultimate bros though. I kind of feel like that would take away from it for me if they had
Well, let me ask you this question, and I'll ask you first, Jack, and then Leo, if you jump in. I actually felt like in that conversation at the end between Spock and Chapel, I felt that Spock is more leaning towards the idea that they are friends and that she's a very good friend and a valuable friend, whereas she's definitely got a thing for him.
Well,
on some level.
Clearly. Yeah.
Is that how you feel about it?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, but because she doesn't want to have a committed relationship, she has a fear of commitment.
Right.
She's not gonna open up that can of worms.
Right. But then that does lead into the dynamic of the TOS relationship. What do you think, Leo?
It's interesting because it is breaking canon somewhat, because these seem to be, while very similar to the original, I think they feel a little more three-dimensional in the relationship than what we saw in the original series.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think even Spock is when he's like, well, listen, I value you. You're an excellent friend. And they're both like, yes. And he is perhaps lying to himself, because there's the idea of saying, and she also says, listen, I know you're not the kind of person who if they're in a relationship, is going to go looking for something else.
Right.
Right. I'm being perhaps a little less elegant about the way.
No, it's not you, Leo. I'm off somewhere. It's not that I'm not, and it's not that I'm not listening to you either. I just keep thinking about, now that's a Star Trek.
That's a Star
I
Trek.
don't know why. It's in my head. I can't get rid of
It is an earworm.
Oh, it is an earworm, yeah.
But while Chapel before has always been like, hey, we're gonna have, I'm just here to have fun, no commitments. We've also heard, this is in the rumor mill, about Roger Corby, who was Christine Chapel's fiance. She was engaged to be married, and people are like, well, where's he? Well, everybody's like everything has to be jammed in, and if it was jammed in, they would complain about it too. So,
but I get the impression we're going to see that season 2.
We are, and people have said just wait, and I believe
exactly.
They're either writing or shooting it now. I'm not sure which. But I like the fact that they're both kind of like, it's almost, there's something very Victorian about Vulcan romance.
Yes.
There's this very like courtship, and there are all these rituals, and there's all this, stuff. And,
and there's specific costuming.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's all sorts of costuming.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that in a Victorian, like people in Victorian times, or at least in the sort of stories we read about people in Victorian times, if you were moneyed, you usually, marriages were arranged. It wasn't like, oh, I met this guy at a party and, we hit it off.
Yeah.
It was very much like arranged by families, and it was about consolidating wealth and power, resulting in probably a fair amount of loveless marriages. But I think they're both sort of almost like, well, they don't want to acknowledge the fact that there's something between them. If they didn't, then they'll have to they'll have to deal with it. But if they both say, yeah, we're both friends, and they're like, yes, that is logical. And then, but it is going to be a source of I think, of strife for everyone down the road.
Oh yeah, exactly.
But,
well, let's see here, guys. An old clock on the wall says we're coming up on 15 after 9.
Okay. I have 2 Easter eggs that I found.
Okay. Let me just hit Jack. Is there anything in particular as a wrap-up point you wanted to make before we go into our Easter eggs and then head out the door?
2 things. One, I wish I was on here for Spock and Bach.
Right.
Because I have a lot of stuff to talk about with that.
Yeah.
But,
you're always free to post anything on the Trek Tonight page.
Is that so?
So, and it's true for anybody in the audience.
Tell me more, Chris.
Yeah. Just if you've got a theory or a thought or any, boy, that sounds like a setup. God damn it! No, this was really. I'm being honest. This is true. Anybody?
Nice.
Damn it. I really am honestly saying, if you have something from the previous episode you want to talk about,
absolutely, then
make sure you post it on the site, and I'm sure we'll get a conversation going.
Yeah.
And that's true for any of you out there.
Yes.
You too.
So if Jack is finished, these are 2 Easter eggs.
No, there actually was something I mentioned.
Oh, okay.
The fact that there was a lot of components to this episode, and I kind of feel like I was watching 2 different episodes at the same time that were going back and forth, which, I mean, on one hand, I kind of liked it because it's sort of like, well, this is all of like the heavy shit that goes on, while there's like, the parties doing their hijinks, but also like it felt a little clumsy, which was awkward because I loved it definitely heralded back to like Gene Roddenberry type, I mean, his style, but it also tried to keep up with this excellent level of writing at the same time, and it didn't exactly marry well.
I will say I get what you're saying, because there was a quality in watching it when I saw it the second time so I could take notes, that made me think of sort of goofy Roddenberry TOS plots.
Yeah.
Where maybe not everything made a lot of sense, and they were always some of my favorites.
Right.
There's a tonal difference between the Pike Mutiny storyline and the sort of Die Hard on the Enterprise, although not really because it wasn't one guy, but it's sort of a little bit of that's a painting with a broad brush. Tonally, they were different because the Pike stuff was kind of lighthearted you can be captured by.
Yeah, it was.
But
yeah, it was lighthearted, swashbuckling kind of piece of the action, kind of.
Yeah.
It was that kind of feel, humor, what have you.
But everybody was so on their game. Like the characters, like it didn't feel like tonally it is odd, but I think because everybody was so authentic to their characters,
that
it's still that I still enjoyed it.
Right.
It didn't take me out because it wasn't like Pike wasn't being uncharacteristic. He was being himself.
Oh, yeah.
And also the idea that they've done this before. That is part of my. Here are my 2 Easter eggs. One, is apparently on Remy's desk, although it may have been Captain Angel's desk, had a Kalto game, which, if you remember from Voyager, is this sort of this logic puzzle that we saw Tuvok playing unsuccessfully in one episode when he's struggling with some emotional issues, and also the Pike when he's talking with number 1, and we're calling it the Alpha Braga 4 scenario. Yeah. And Brandon Braga is one of the producers of Star Trek in the past, so that's maybe a little tip of the hat to the past executive producers, showrunners for.
Interesting, though, to have a past executive producer have a mutiny plan named after them. Is there a hidden message in there somewhere?
If there is, Brandon Braga, if you'd like to phone in and send us a video message, we'd be
exactly post on because you can too post on the Trek Tonight webpage.
Those were the 2 little notes I had. I will also add, as I do it.
Yeah, I want to throw Keith's thing in here just quickly before we get out of here. Waiting patiently, I say, he's been negative about the episode, but there were elements he enjoyed. Captain Angel's scenery chewing, the kiss, the mutiny. I do not consider watching this episode a waste of time. I will say, I agree with you, Keith. At 5 a.m. when I finally trundled off to bed, I don't know that I would have agreed with you, but that may have been because it was 5 a.m. Yes. But in the second viewing of it, when I was a little more clear-headed, I agree with you. I'm actually getting fonder of it, I think, because we've all discussed it.
Yeah. I don't think it's the best episode.
No.
But I still think it's a solid episode.
Yeah. And I wonder because, and I stated this before, and I could be completely off base, and maybe somebody out there knows the answer to this question, but at some point, I believe this show got delayed because of COVID. Am I correct? Production. If they got halfway through a production schedule, that's the theory that I have.
It's possible.
And so my theory then says, well, is this episode, is the slight tonal difference we're seeing just because the production got halted and then started up again? And it might be hard to keep that same flavor consistent, when you've taken several months in between and a break. I don't know.
That's how they shot the ship when Pike's coming back. They were actually in quarantine. And all the was sheet.
Yeah.
They just sort of threw that together.
So they had the guy climbing the bed sheets. Yeah. Because he was in quarantine.
That was actually his niece's bedroom.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
There you go.
See?
We're good.
Learn so much on this program, don't you?
But I'm not sure. I would have to do a little dive to see.
Yeah, maybe we should poke around with that a little bit.
But I enjoyed it as I've enjoyed all the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I in no way felt disappointed. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with Cybok. I think Cybok could possibly be a very interesting flavor to add to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's maybe better to address it than ignore it. Like if they can find an interesting story to apply, I assume that Cybok will get away at a certain point,
right?
Because as he and eventually shows up in Star Trek V,
right?
He's escaped the spa rehabilitation.
Although, quite frankly, where would you rather be? The spa of rehabilitation, the Betty Ford Clinic of Vulcan, or that horrible planet that we find him on in Star Trek V, where it's just like this awful desert and there's this crappy city that they built, slapped together as a part of a peace treaty. And
we was just getting drunk and just, a low point for
people
David
at the end of their careers have been shoveled off to this.
Yeah. I'd rather stay the Vulcan Spa, frankly.
Me too.
But you know, just
the Greenbrier of Vulcan. Anyway, I think we've kind of got this one. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Leo, outside of just the show?
I would say, because I'm a whore, please check out my writings. I'm a writer. Genesec.org. You can see it right there, or right there. There you go.
Yep, there it is.
Where I have a lot of, I have 2 novels, a bunch of short stories.
I got it.
Some haikus. I also have a Twitter account, at Trek Haiku, where I post a new Star Trek haiku every day. Been doing that for about a year and a half, or thereabouts.
Right.
So please check that out. I also have a play in the G60 62nd Play Festival, which is going to be performed in Leeds, England. They're doing it all. They're doing it in England. They're doing one in Houston, Texas. Great episode of Trek Tonight. I thoroughly enjoyed your guest starring role tonight, Jack.
Oh, thank you.
Great for Captain John. And that
Starbase 80, you know.
We
Starbase Commander.
Yes. So that'll be available to stream at a certain point, and I'll try to wrap this up. I know, and that they're performing it on. They're also. I'm just rambling at this point.
Just take a breath.
Anyway,
all right.
It's coming up. I'll give you more details as we get closer.
Yeah.
It will not be broadcasting it live, sadly, but we'll be able to stream it afterwards. And if you don't feel bad, because it is only 60 seconds long.
Right.
Like, 49 other plays or so.
Right.
So there you go.
But Leo is an incredibly prolific writer, and definitely
you.
check out his blog, because there's just so much good stuff there to read.
Yes.
And very, very high quality stuff. The only thing I'm going to say is that I just have completed my 1/350th scale, 1/350 scale model of the Enterprise, the kit built by Polar Lights. My own work with lighting the interior of it. This is one of 3 starships that I'm building. And the first one, and I am going to, it's just so darn big. I really can't show it off live, but I'm going to take some pictures of it and maybe a little video and post that on the Trek Tonight site for the hobby time stuff. So that'll be kind of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah. Anything else you got going on, Jack?
Well, besides being woke and broke as the millennial as I am, not that much.
Yeah.
2 months of tea, and the captain hired me in security.
Yeah, that's true.
To take bullet on this episode.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. It really wasn't that bad. It was actually perfectly fine. Yeah.
So great.
Thank you so much for having me.
I thank you for coming. I enjoyed that. I actually am able to kind of give you the Carson. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely.
So someday we'll have a set and we'll all be in the same city.
Yes.
Yeah, marvelous thing. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm going to cue up our outro. See you all next week. And thanks again for those of you who stuck through all the way to the end. We love you.
Bless you.
We love you. And we'll see you next week, where we will be. Oh, I do have to apologize. One last note. I posted that this episode, because I mistakenly just followed some jackass on the internet, what they said it was, and I entitled the episode Blind Date, which it was not Blind Date. So I will try to be a little more careful as to where I get my tips as to what the episode is actually called. I get it now. The clip showing was talking about the blind date. So that I get it. I get it. But at any rate, so we will see you next week for episode 11 of Trek Tonight. And don't worry. Oh, hey. Hey, I'm old. Good night, folks.
Good night. That's a Star Trek.
That's a Star Trek. Oh, brother. Oh, and all my Google Chrome ads are in the way of me turning off the broadcast. All right. Good night, folks. Have a great week.